I'm Deepak Chopra. You're watching One World with Deepak Chopra, and the program is being brought to you from NASDAQ OMX Marketplace in New York City. And my very special guest today is Nigel Barker, and you're from Sri Lanka in a sense.
In a sense, absolutely. Well, my mum is from Sri Lanka, and I was brought up with a lot of Sri Lankan values from her, my grandmother as well, who lived in the house with us. My father happens to be English and Irish, but he was born in India.
I see.
And ironically, both my parents were born in India, even though my mum's Sri Lankan, and they met in England 20 years later, but they'd found out when they were kids, they'd only grown up a street apart from each other.
It's what we call synchronicity.
There you go. Who is to know? So it was an interesting childhood. I think growing up in England in the 70s, at a time when there were very few mixed racial marriages, I think my parents had a very interesting philosophy on life. They were very philanthropic. They brought the children in on everything.
What did your father do?
My father was actually a financial consultant. But he was a very religious man, and going to church was a big part of his routine, and multiple times during the week. But I always remember growing up with them getting us as children, and I was one of 6, to rally and raise money with cans, to march to save the seals in the streets of London, and to go to Speaker's Corner and get on. I see my father getting on a soapbox and talking about people's rights. So I guess from a very young age, I was activated, and he really taught me, along with my mother's encouragement, that you've got to speak up for the issues in the world. And that's certainly what I've tried to do, even though I work in fashion and photography.
Good. How did you get there?
Well, I can blame my mother for this one. My mother happens to have been a Miss Sri Lanka in 1967, and she brought over her family from Sri Lanka to England through her modeling and acting, and became a bit of a sensation for several years in England. And it was interesting for me because my mum got really looked after my grandmother and my aunt
in England.
In England, she took care of the family before she married my father. And growing up, I got to see how she used the entertainment industry not just to glamorize her life, but far from it. If anything, she used it to support her family and to make a better world for them. And it was an interesting sort of, vision of that world for me, because it was almost the reverse of glamorous. It was, absolutely down to earth. And when I was only 18 years old, she entered me into a competition called the Clothes Show in England, one of the very first televised.
As a model?
As a model. I like to say I came kicking and screaming because I didn't want to do it. Not 100% true. I didn't win. I got in the final 3. And of course, ironically enough, I ended up becoming a judge on a television show in America. That's right. And sort of doing a 180 and,
America's Next Top Model.
I did that for 17 seasons. Now I have my own show, The Face, on Oxygen, which I'm hosting with Naomi Campbell. So, my life has taken this very unusual...
And what's the show about?
It's a show similar to The Voice, where we have 3 supermodel coaches, Naomi Campbell being one of them, Lydia Hurst and Anne V this season, for season 2, which we're about to air in February of 2014. And they are mentors, they're supermodel mentors. They've handpicked teams of models, and they're really teaching them how they became so successful. And I host the show, and my job is really to explain to the audience out there what's actually going on, what we're seeing, and do a bit of translation, because the fashion world can be a bit confusing and fickle for people when they're watching what is actually happening.